Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm excited to be doing a first impression tutorial, swatches, and overview on a brand new palette from Anastasia Beverly Hills. This is the holiday palette that they released called the Primrose palette. This palette does include 2 blushes, which is intriguing to me. That's why I don't have blush on. I have everything else on but eyeshadow and blush. So I'm going to show you close-up swatches. I'm going to compare it to one of my other palettes that I think is probably most similar, and we're going to see how this applies, how it blends. So if you enjoy videos like this, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, I hope you subscribe. And if you want to see me applying and swatching and giving my first impression on this new Anastasia Beverly Hills palette, then let's go ahead and begin. So a little bit about the palette. I did purchase this again from the Anastasia Beverly Hills website. It is retailing for $55. It does have 12 shades in here. There's going to be 10 eyeshadows and then 2 larger pan blushes. They do say that every pan is larger than the typical Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes. I will show you when we get to comparing it. So the outer packaging has this really nice matte sort of textured pink coating, and that's kind of what the palette looks like as well. It is longer and thinner than most of the ABH palettes, which I thought was a cool touch, just something a little bit different. I actually do prefer this. I feel like it would be easier to clean. It feels nice and sleek. It's very thin, so I feel like this would store better just because of how thin it is. For reference, I pulled out my Modern Renaissance palette. You can see that the Primrose is obviously longer and it is thinner, not by a ton, but it is a little bit different, which I do like. It also doesn't have the velvet front. It has more of this. I really don't know what this texture is, but it feels like it will be able to stay cleaner. You'll be able to kind of wipe it off with alcohol, stuff like that. Whereas when you have this sort of kind of velvety feel, it's a little bit more difficult to keep clean. So when you open the palette up, it does have a magnetic closure, and then you see you have 10 shadows in here and 2 blushes. I think the color story is beautiful. Again, it's nothing revolutionary, but it's something that a lot of people are going to want to wear. There's also a mirror in here as well with the shade names on each shadow and blush. They describe this palette as a luxurious rose-inspired all-in-one palette designed to help you create all your day-to-night looks easily and brilliantly. We packed this season's most coveted beauty with 12 buttery shades and the intense color payoff of your dreams, so you can effortlessly go from natural to ultra glam. No makeup artist required. Think rich, decadent mattes and multidimensional metallics, blends and builds to deliver all the gorgeous effects you've been craving. I always love reading these descriptions these brands write up because they're a little over the top. It's like, this is the most special, enchanting palette ever. Really, is it going to perform well? Is it going to be pigmented, blendable, last all day, and give me a beautiful look without a lot of effort? That's what I'm interested in knowing. Also, quickly wanted to mention that both palettes are made in the USA when I'm comparing the Modern Renaissance with the new Primrose. And in terms of the bigger pan sizes, the Modern Renaissance, each pan is 0.7 grams, whereas in the Primrose, each pan is 1.22 grams. So definitely getting larger pan sizes in this like they claimed. Quickly wanted to say that one thing I noticed when I was swatching specifically these shimmers is they are very creamy. They almost feel like a cream. It's almost like you barely put your finger in and a lot comes off. I could see them being a little bit chunky. It's interesting. Like when you touch these, you don't want to go in and try to get a bunch of pigment because they almost indent, like they almost have a cream formula. I mean, I know they're not a cream, but they feel very creamy and like a heavy metallic. They're not thin in texture at all. So I'll be intrigued to see how they'll actually go on the eyes. So I'm actually going to start out with this shade Honey, which seems to be more of a neutral shade in here. Most of these are warmer tones. A couple of the purples have a little bit more of a cooler pull, but this is definitely a romantic color story. I need to zoom you in. Hold on. Definitely noticing quite a bit of kick up. That's pretty typical with ABH shadows. Whoa, I didn't realize how pigmented that was. Okay, I hadn't even looked in the mirror. But she did say, or Norvina did say, and on the ABH Instagram, that this is a new formula. Definitely looking deeper on the eye and warmer than I had anticipated. So I'm also going to run that same color on the lower lash line with that same brush. It's very pigmented, just powdery, but again, I feel like that's pretty standard with Anastasia shadows. So next I want to go into Primrose. This one is a matte with sparkle in it, which typically doesn't show up on the eye. Somebody's literally having like a race out here and it's driving me nuts. they've been doing it like all weekend and I'm just like, okay. So I'm gonna go in with that same brush. Actually, I need to tap off. See, that's the thing, like there's a lot kicking off here. And I'm gonna keep this lower and on the outer portion of the eye, sort of blending in. I'm not noticing a ton of fallout. You just definitely have to tap your brush off because there's a lot of powder kick up. This is sort of an interesting shade. It's not like a super bright purple, but kind of an in-between purple, which is really nice. I'm gonna jump in next to this mango shade. I wanna see if I can use this brush here and just go over the edges. Nice and pigmented, even though this is a very light peachy shade. That color combo is really nice. The purple and the peach. I have always loved almost like golds and purples together, so I can see, like sometimes when I do a purple eye look, I love to do a really peachy lip. It just looks beautiful together, so I love that color combination. And I'm also going to sweep that purple on the lower lash line. Definitely getting a little bit of fallout, but no big deal. I usually do my eyes first. So to really pump this up, I'm gonna go into the deepest shade called Deep Berry, and I'm gonna use a small pencil brush. So I'm just blending this on the outer corner here. And I'm also taking that deep shade close up on the lower lash line. I'm gonna bring it in about that much, so not all the way in. Okay, and then I'm gonna go back into this mango shade and I'm going to blend this just lightly underneath. So for the lid, I'm gonna go in with this Sparkling Amber, which is a gold tone. And again, it's very thick, almost feels like a cream. Yeah, ooh, look at that fallout, okay. Very pretty, but it is a little bit chunky. That fallout is real bad. Yeah, the fallout is real bad on this one. For the center of the lid, I want to try to add a little bit of this rose water. I'm going to use a damp brush and see if that kind of limits the fallout. So I'm going to put this in the center here. Yeah, I would say the fallout on these really are pretty intense. I would definitely use a glitter glue, maybe just do your eyes first. I am gonna take a little bit of that rose water and put it on my inner corner, honestly because we already had just so much kind of fall down here. They're just really chunky and flaky, lots of fallout, very thick formula. Not really my favorite metallic formula. I mean, it's definitely beautiful, but just kind of messy. Just to add a little bit of fun, I'm going to attempt, hopefully this is not gonna get all over, Fire Opal with a wet brush. I'm gonna kind of pull this like that on the lower lash line. I'm just reinforcing that inner corner. Might as well just take it there since we're just going for it. I think I'm gonna apply a little bit of this Fire Opal just on this outer lower portion of my lid here. Kind of blending up into that purple. So I went ahead and finished the eyes off camera. I did a winged liner with my Huda Beauty liner. I will link it down below. And then I also used the Nabla black liner for the inner rim and tight lining. And then I applied lashes from Lashaholic. So I'll have all that linked down below. So now I want to jump into the blushes and see how they perform. I'm actually going to start with Saddle, which is the deeper shade. I'm going to use a more targeted brush. This is a Smith 112. And I want to keep this higher up and then put Grapefruit, that lighter shade, on kind of the apples of my cheeks. So I'm going to start out with Saddle. So I'm going to start blending this back here. I'm really going to intensify this so you can see the color. I'm going to go ahead and do it on this side as well. So here is the blush in Saddle all by itself. It's really beautiful. It's like a burnt shade. It looks like it might be a bronzer in some of the promo photos, but it definitely is not a bronzer. I mean, it has an orange terracotta undertone. So now I want to jump into Grapefruit, and I'm going to apply this more towards the center of my face just to see if this shows up. I mean, it's very powdery. That's what I'm talking about. This is a very messy palette. I don't know if I love that. So I'm going to start applying this. So here is what both of the blushes look like together. I feel like I actually do prefer the deeper shade. I may change my mind if I use them separately, but I really just like the way that Saddle gave me a really nice kind of burnt look. I feel like it is a pretty combination, especially if you do dip in to this shade right here, Fire Opal, which I did use a little bit. So overall, I feel like the blushes are really nice and pigmented. They are powdery, just like the rest of this palette, but I like the look that I came up with. So now I want to jump in to my final thoughts. So this is my final look using the new Anastasia Beverly Hills Primrose palette, and I want to give you my first impression. First of all, the mattes are super blendable, very pigmented, but they are powdery. This is something that I've noticed with ABH shadows in the past, and even though this is a new formula, I'm noticing the same thing. Very messy. When I look at my desk and just like my hands, there was shadow everywhere. So that's something that kind of annoys me a little bit. I'm not used to so much kick up in a lot of my favorite formulas, just a lot of kick up in the shadows just all around. Now, in terms of the metallics, they are extremely creamy and thick. They can be flaky, a little bit chunky. When you press in, you can almost indent into the pan, almost like a ColourPop Super Shock. And if you really kind of go back and forth, I mean, you're gonna get a chunk of metallic pigment, which can be really hard to work with. They kind of need to be like kind of pressed back and forth and really swiped on the eye so you can get that high shine. They're not really a formula that I would sort of pack on because they're just so chunky and thick. I would actually just take a little bit and almost use like swiping motions to really get the metallic shine out. The thing about this is the fallout is intense on these. I would not do my face makeup before going in with these metallics. I even tried wetting my brush. The fallout was pretty much unreal on these, which I typically don't mind fallout, but I feel like there was a lot of fallout. A little bit with the mattes, of course, but a lot with the shimmers. But overall, I think they're beautiful. It's just one of those that less is more, build it up. I wouldn't just like swipe on a huge chunk. You're gonna get stuff all over your face. There's definitely some glitter in some of these as well. So just keep that in mind. Definitely just do your eyes first. And then moving on to the blushes, I actually like the shade Saddle more. Very pigmented, just a nice matte formula, but they are dusty, just like everything else in here, a lot of powder kick up. So make sure you tap in and then tap your brush off, but I like the colors they chose. I know these are not going to be universal for everyone. I feel like they were trying to do a deeper option, a more rich option, and then a lighter, just kind of neutral peachy shade. So I think the color story is beautiful in here. I don't know that everyone's going to love having a blush or two blushes in an eyeshadow palette, but I do think it can come in handy if you're on the go. And even if you just like one of the blushes, you can just use that blush, not have to pack another one. I just don't know if I personally would even remember to specifically go into this palette to use the blushes, or if it's just one of those things where if I take the palette for the eyeshadows, I use the blush because it's there. So when comparing this to the Modern Renaissance, I do feel like I thought they would be closer than they actually are. The Modern Renaissance has more of those sort of barn red and then pinky tones like these three right here, maybe even this shade, and then you've got the neutrals, whereas the Primrose palette has more peachy tones, more terracotta. You've even got that copper in here. This is very peachy right here. The blush is very peachy. And then you've got this purple that's really different that you're not going to get in the Modern Renaissance. Even this copper, you're not going to get in the Modern Renaissance, and this pink. So it is different. There's different tones in here. And when I swatched and sort of tried to compare, these were the closest shades that I could find. So this is the Modern Renaissance and this is the Primrose. So you can see they're not really even close. This is like the light gold champagne in the Modern Renaissance, and then you can see the gold in the Primrose. It's just totally different, much more of like a copper gold, different finish even, and then even this shade in the Modern Renaissance is more of a kind of maroon shade, whereas in this Primrose palette, it's more of a berry shade. So there's just differences. Of course, you can probably get a similar look, maybe somewhat, but I don't think that they're close enough to say if you have the Modern Renaissance, don't look into this one if you really like these kind of colors. All right, guys, so I think that is everything for this first impression swatches and try on of the brand new Anastasia Beverly Hills Primrose palette. I want to know your thoughts. Did you pick this up? Are you excited about it? What did you think about my look, how the products applied, the fallout, just how dusty they were or how pigmented and metallic they were? I would love to know your thoughts. I will link it down below, as well as every other thing that I have on my face, including the lashes and liner that I used. I know we're getting into the holiday season where we're getting a lot of new palettes, so I'm probably going to be doing more videos like this where I'm focusing in on one palette so I can really go in depth and show you swatches, comparisons, and really kind of give my first impression. But of course, I will continue to play with this. I do like the look that I came up with. I just feel like I would definitely do my eyes first moving forward. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts down below and what you want me to review next. If you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.